You need to have a talk with him, Neil.
His name is Barack.
Oh, that's part of the problem.
He was bought as a female,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
but came out.
that happens.
I love it.
When you buy chicks, you
Yeah.
specify the sex,
Yeah.
and there's somebody who's called a sexer who determines whether they're
Yeah.
males or females at a very, very young age, like one day.
That's good.
Okay, okay. Put the rooster away.
Only talk about the hen house?
Here we go. Are we good to go?
We are.
Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A couple of things. First of all, if you could review the minutes from December for the next time. I didn't get a notice out to people, and they were, there's a lot they had to look at, so that we can finalize the minutes for December 20th and 21st. And if Maria could get them out, then for this one as well. If not, then we'll do this one on the week after next. So we have meetings both next Wednesday, which is the 24th, and then the following Wednesday, which is the 31st. And then it's on to deliberative sessions.
Are those both at 6:30?
Yes, both at 6:30. Now, Jackie Cole called me, and, no, it actually didn't call me. When I went to the John Stark public hearing, she asked if we needed her to come back, and I said, I don't really know at this point, but we'll get hold of you if we have questions or if we need you to come back. So if, as we proceed, people feel that we need her input, then I'll let her know, and we can plug her into our schedule for the next, one of the next two meetings. Okay, so minutes, Jackie. I ran off copies because I didn't know who picked them up at the public hearings or not, school, Ware School District and John Stark. So I did run off copies of the warrant for each that we could use as a guide tonight. So I'll pass those out, and then we can decide how we want to proceed from there. I think that's probably enough
Thank
time.
you. Can we have a few more down on this side, please?
For sure. I think I have one that I saved myself anyways.
Can you print this out now? The thing that I sent?
I have a printout. I only found one of the interviews. That's the one that has.
Is there one?
That's for
Fax
Ware.
and fax to the
The other
warrant
was John Stark.
That's the one that, well, then I could use that.
Elizabeth, before you
I
sit
need
down,
one more for,
a present for you.
Yes, that's the,
When the school people made the presentation, you didn't get one of
I
those.
thought I gave it to you, but I guess not.
yes,
Yeah.
For her.
and then I'll show you our.
I need another John
our
Stark for Liz.
recommendation back.
Oh, she has one.
That's what the third one's for.
She has that?
Right
Yeah,
now.
just a little.
Okay,
I'll trade you a Ware for a John Stark.
all right. Need trading cards here, need a John Stark.
Tom, what's your plan for this evening?
He's working on
I'm punting. No, I thought we would take a look at the schools, because the town had to, as you know, the other night, had to, where does it delay, continue their public hearing. So we don't have a completed warrant, they haven't made decisions, but I think we can, as I said earlier, if we go beyond what we want to do with the schools, we can take a look at and at least get some tentative ideas on those things that are in the CIP budget, because I doubt that they're going to change a whole lot. on Monday night, so we can at least make tentative recommendations on things like, the truck, a variety of things for the highway, police, fire.
The reason why I raised the issue is that if I were a selectman and I knew that the finance committee had taken a straw poll and felt a certain way about all of the articles, I might find that useful, because as a selectman, there is still opportunity for them to change warrant articles and the budget.
Right. Yeah, and we can talk about that as we move along. I don't, have a brain cramp. So, let's move with the schools, but then we'll come back to that, because it does make sense, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
Do you have one more John Stark there by
One more
chance?
John Stark. I think I have my own clip to the other back of it.
Very good now.
I have an extra one, because I already have the John Stark one.
I think we're good down this end.
Good. Do you guys have the town one? I have one.
I've got Ware School and John Stark.
Are we all set on the copies on both sides here? All right. So, I think we should just proceed with the school districts, because we do have basically all of the material. In the past, we wanted to have everything before we make a decision on anything, but we do have at least a draft of the town warrant. And so even though there are some open-ended questions there, I think we have enough ideas, and also we have Tom's handiwork.
Yeah.
So I think we can move ahead and take a look at these and discuss them. And that'll also give us the opportunity, if we want to speak to the superintendent again, it gives her an opportunity to come and speak to us next week or the week after, hopefully next week. So that we'll leave it all until that last week for deliberative session. Okay, so, why don't we start with the Ware schools? There are 4 warrant articles. The first 2 really aren't anything that would be voted on, so we have just 2 warrant articles to make recommendations on: the budget and the teacher's contract. Would somebody like to open with a statement or opinion? Neil?
If I'm not mistaken, the proposed budget is lower than the default budget. Correct.
Correct.
18,733,000 for the default, and 18,709,000
Right.
for the proposed. So I would like to, are you looking for motions, or?
Yes, sure.
I'd like to move that the Finance Committee recommend the Ware School District proposed budget.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
John? Discussion.
I'll speak to the motion. The school district made an extraordinary effort this year to reduce expenses. Their motivation was largely to make the very costly labor agreement more palatable. But they also recognized that there has been a significant decline in student numbers over the past decade. And they originally came in, at the time I think the superintendent spoke to us and said that they were going to eliminate 2 positions. Those were 2 positions that were unfilled. And subsequently, at a school board meeting, with frankly great angst among school board members, they voted to reduce another 2 positions, so teaching positions. I'm talking about full-time teachers. I'm not talking about paras or administrative staff. So this budget now is based on, as is the default, on 4 fewer positions than their current budget. There were some other changes, but those, I think, were the most significant and will have the longest impact, positive and negative, depending upon your perspective.
Did they, either the superintendent or in one of the board meetings with people who attended the wares, indicate what those positions were? Not that it would necessarily make a difference in our deliberations, but
They-
it just,
I don't recall them specifically stating that it was a teacher in grade 3. I think they're going to try to deal with that through attrition, frankly. There are 2 vacant positions, which they're backfilling with specialists and other people. And if history repeats itself, come next fall, a number of teachers who are currently on staff will resign and move elsewhere or leave the profession. That's been the history of Ware for the past number of years. And so my guess is that they will try to make those positions vacant, the vacant ones, so that they don't have to literally fire a current employee, because they don't have enough teachers as it is.
Bill, did you have something to add?
No, I don't think they mentioned specific teachers. The only thing I would say on this is this type of approach is welcome. I've been personally advocating for a reduction in teachers with the reduction in student population. They still project they would have, I believe the number was 19 and a half students average class size next year with the reductions they made. And I know that I only caught the tail end of it at the school, one of the school board meetings, but when they were making those last 2 cuts, there was additional discussion about possibly a couple more positions, but they were uncomfortable taking any more than the 4. I would have liked to have seen a couple more if that could have happened, because that's what really reduces the cost, and that's what brings the budget down this year. The only thing I would say is, I know the teacher's contract is very large, and it's almost a shame that it took a contract issue to get them to move on removing some of the positions that I feel is overdue. So, but it is at least a start, and I think that is, I mean, it's below the default. If they had taken a couple more positions, the default and the proposed would have both come down together. It isn't like it would have come down further below the default, but they would have come down together. So at least it's better than it has been in the last couple of years. So it's the right way to approach it.
Under the law, if you remove a position in your proposed budget, you must remove that in the default budget. So that's one of the consequences. One other thing that I mentioned to the board at their hearing and separately to the superintendent is that the step of reducing administrative personnel is much harder because some of the functions of those administrative personnel have to be performed, and it's very difficult to get a part-time whatever and still provide all your functions. So some very creative thinking is going to have to go into that over the next few years so that the administrative staff shrinks as the student population and the teaching staff shrink.
Right, they lost 73, they dropped by 73 students this year in the enrollment, so, you're right, they're gonna have to look at that next year carefully. It's already been done, and we don't have any say in that, but I think that's a message. Could I ask a question?
Of course.
Neil, at one time you did a percentage calculation of the budget, proposed budget and the contract. And I think you came up with there was a 7-point-something% increase. Do you have a new?
I will try to find that.
Okay, I was curious if you had a new number on that. The overall, if they both pass, what percentage increase are we talking about? The budget's only a couple of points, but the teacher's contract adds a lot to it. So just looking at a little bit more of a bigger picture, just curious. But I think it's probably less than 7 now, but something to consider, in my mind.
Okay. Anyone else? Comments?
I have to agree with Bill, Tom, and Neil. It's nice to see the 4 positions reduced, but it was really, if you pardon the phraseology, more of an act of duress, because they are pushing so hard on this contract. But it is long overdue. The SAU is staffing up instead of down, and the administrative costs are a big problem, a huge problem. And there is a rumor, they're having meetings on it, about moving their facilities into John Stark. All this is gonna weigh into more salaries, and I'm concerned about what it takes to get them to take a realistic view going forward.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough information on that to make it part of our discussion for this year. Because I obviously would be not having to pay rent on the facility they're using now. So,
Could save money.
they would save money in that sense. As far as how it relates to staffing, I would have no idea, so.
Yeah, I'd be curious next year as to your thought. I don't know that, I think it's not germane right now as much,
Part of where my
but,
thought is coming from, we're talking about, we've had a decrease of 73 people, correct? And
that's at the Ware District. Yeah,
Correct.
right.
And if you look at where we are at the grade school level, where we are at the middle school level, and where we are at the high school level, if somebody at River wants to talk about, you know, where the percentages are going up and down, and right now across the state, it's looked like it's going down. I'm looking towards, and you have to also look towards the future. Granted, we don't have the details, but you do have to be prepared for the future. If I start housing things in the school, if I have an increase in people, what happens, where do I put them? I don't
Okay.
want to hear, I want to build another school or an addition.
All right, you're worried about that, okay, I get it.
Well, that's a good point, but I
But it's not
I
happening.
think they would have projections for the high school, because as they look at the elementary school, and what's coming for the next few years, they should, I would say, should be able to calculate it out for the next 4 or 5 years at least, as far as available space, probably longer. Because those lower numbers that are in the elementary are gonna reflect on the high school as well in the future years.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion before we have a vote on this? So the motion on the floor is to approve the proposed budget for the Ware School District.
To recommend.
Recommend, right?
Is this a straw poll, or are we actually voting on it?
This is an actual vote, I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, just
Yeah.
checking. Well, you said straw poll earlier, so,
That was for the selectmen,
okay,
where we don't have finals.
okay.
Yeah, this is their final warrant that
Yep,
they distributed at both, well, this was at the Ware public hearing, and they also distributed the final warrant at the John Stark. So, all those who are in favor of recommending the proposed budget, please raise your hand so we can get a count. Looks like it's unanimous. How many of us here tonight? 11? 1, 2, 3.
10? 11.
11.
Thanks, Tom.
Now, do we want to take a look at our reasoning on this now?
Sure.
Okay, so why don't we do that?
Yep, that way I can get ahead of the game.
Now, you said you had kind of got a jump on some of this.
No,
You
I
had-
didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
Okay.
No, you never know.
This is an easy layup for him, though.
Yeah, well, this one, I would think.
I've missed layups in the past. Okay.
So, well, the obvious reason to be would be that they, they cut positions and they have a proposed budget that's lower than the default budget.
Yeah, it's a
It's a-
1.25%
It's a,
increase.
yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's a 1.25%
Right.
increase over last year's, which is reasonable.
Last year's was a default, I think, right?
Yes,
Whatever they passed.
yep. But I think last year there was also, the default and the proposed were, they were right there, about the same last year.
Right.
Okay. So it's 1.25% for teaching positions. Effort was made to reduce teaching positions consistent with reduction in student populations over the years. I might add the term overdue reduction in teachers' positions. You know,
Okay.
you know, I may put some Anderson language in there.
Well, you wrote the blurbs, Bill.
And if I bring it back and I put it out to everybody, then you can
Yeah,
just tell me
yeah.
next week to get it out of
Right,
there.
that's,
Okay.
that's what
Yeah.
the real value is in having you do these, so that we don't have to reinvent them all at the table.
Right.
You know, it would take forever.
Right.
10 people, 11 people
Right.
all. chipping
Correct.
in here. So, all right.
No, I'll put a positive spin on it.
Article 4 for the school district warrant is the teacher's contract. It's a 2-year contract, and the figures are on the sheet that I gave you. We also heard from the superintendent on that, at least at the public hearing. I'm sure she said it here too, the reasoning behind that kind of a bump, focusing on the middle year seniorities, I guess you'd say. The-
Teachers who have been in the system longer than 5 years,
Yeah.
it seems to be geared to.
I'll open it up. I'm totally against it. First and foremost, when you look at the cost of living and the social security, it's 3.2%. These people get a minimum of 4% increase every year. We have just about a quarter of the population that lives on a fixed income. And they do not get a 4% increase every year. The other thing, while I understand that teachers leave after a couple years, I have nieces and nephews in the school system. I was in school. I had new teachers every year. I didn't have a problem learning. My nieces and nephews don't seem to have a problem. But the bigger concern is there seems to be a very strong sense of they've been here and we need to bring them up. You don't do that in a business. Corporations don't do that. And for some reason, they want a big increase. We're looking at close to 11%, if I've got this right.
I got the numbers.
You got the numbers? What are they?
Yeah. Well,
It depends on,
I'll wait till you're done.
But it's a huge increase, and I don't think in this economy, we're in a recession, that you can do that to people. Everybody needs to tighten their belts, and that includes the schools, the towns, everybody, because the people footing the bill for this are not getting more money to pay these bills.
So let me just ask for clarification, because my understanding that the cost of living adjustment, which is COLA, was 8.2% during the pandemic about 2 years ago, and using an inflationary impact of 3.4%, that came in hotter than anticipated, with an academic year of 9 months versus 12 is a little bit skewed. And so I just want to, are you referring to a 4.4% increase based on a 9-month year or a 12-month?
I'm talking about the 12 months that came out of the federal government and the state this year.
In reference to Social Security, inflation, please clarify.
Social Security.
Okay, and so when you're referencing the increase in the contract for teachers, you mentioned 4.4%, so is that,
I didn't say anything about 4.4%.
okay, so the reference is based on inflation?
It's based on the Social Security and what the cost of living was given this year. They were both 3.2% according to our state figures. But more importantly, you have to look at, you're going back to the pandemic. There's a very small group of people that,
I'm not, by the way, please understand.
you did raise the pandemic up.
I
That
made
came-
reference to the COLA adjustment of 8.2%, and
During
you
the
made reference
pandemic.
to a 4.4% increase in the teachers.
I never said anything about a 4.4% increase. That's not come out of
So
me.
please rewind to the figures that you just stated then.
3.2,
3.2 in reference to what?
cost of living and social security.
Okay,
And that came out of the federal government. I checked down in Washington.
Okay.
And I've checked up here at the State House.
okay, so CPI came in at 3.4, higher, and so in terms of, are you agreeing to the increase? So it just seems like you're counterintuitive to what your statements
I'm
are.
not-
I think, if I, just a second,
Go
okay?
ahead.
Bill, you had a more accurate
I
figure
think what
there
Bill's gonna
on-
say may
I'm
change.
getting ready to pass out some stuff here.
Yeah,
Okay,
I don't know if I have enough for, does anybody have teacher's contract with them?
I do.
Good, so you have access to the tables in the back. I'm talking, the thing I want to focus on is the pay scale.
Yeah, I got it right here.
And does anybody need copies of the current pay scale?
I might.
I have mine.
I'll take it.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, I gave it to you.
We'll share. I'll take a
Yeah,
picture.
yeah, because
Yeah, I
I've
don't-
got copies. This is the current pay scale. It's the one on the bottom of this sheet because they're in the 23-24 second year
You have it.
of this.
yeah, when I tried
okay.
to run those off on the,
I think,
it came out all jumbled, so I don't have
well,
them.
I think you got enough here. Okay, it should be enough. That's the
Use that
current
wire
pay scale,
to go up there.
if you need those.
Well, I'll-
Because I just want to bring your attention to a couple numbers on there. So you got those, and on the proposed pay scale, does anybody need those? There's two there, there's one here.
You should have that too.
Yeah, we need them down here.
That's in the proposed contract.
Some both have them.
Proposed contract, anybody need these? Okay, we'll pass those down. Some of them will have a little note on them, things I'm going to refer to.
Absolutely.
On this salary schedule, people may be wondering why the first year of the contract is over $900,000, okay? And that's what I'm going to try to explain. Year one's 901,000, I believe it was higher than that, but when they took the last two teachers' positions out, it brought that number down to 901,000. So if you do that, and then 300-some thousand next year. What they did, the big change, if you look at the current table and then the proposed table, the current table has a bubble in it. For years 5 to 10, if you look at that, if you go down the current year table, you go years 0 to 15, and the 5 to 10, basically you don't get a pay raise in there right now.
Thank you.
Okay? But it's encouragement to have you go get your master's, because if you get your master's, you're gonna get a bump, you start sliding to the right on the table, okay? And then you can go down from there, okay? So that was built into that. What they did with this salary, the proposed salary, years 0 to 6, you get a 6% increase, those teachers in year one. They get another 5% increase in year 2. Now, those numbers, for those people, for the teachers that are in the system with 5 to 6 years there, that's consistent with the type of pay raises we're given, being proposed for the town employees. I don't have a problem with that. But when they blew up the bubble, they started giving pay increases for every year marching down, okay? So every teacher beyond 7 years, it isn't a 5 or 6% increase. And I'm going to give you example number 1. Let's look at the salary schedule on the proposed. You got a teacher, year of entry, 11 years. That teacher would get $58,191 as compared to the one on the current contract, $46,196. Now that means that teacher who walks in the door today and does their job, next year, if this contract passes, they will walk in the door and do their job and have a $11,995 pay increase, which is 26% increase in pay. Not 5, not 6, 26.
For which year?
11.
Year of entry, 11. BA, currently 46,196. They will make 58,191. In year 2, they will make 61,102. So they'll be over 30% pay raise after 2 years of the contract. That's one example. I'll give you another one. Let's say a year of entry, teacher number 2 is at 7 years, but they have a master's degree, so they're at 49,726 in the current table. And they will, in the new table, they will receive a pay hike to $58,448, which is an $8,700 increase, 17.5% in year 1, and another 1,000 or so in year 2. Teacher number 3, let's take one that's really down there. Year of entry, say 14. Currently, but they still got their bachelor's. They've just enjoyed teaching. They don't want to go out and get their master's. They've worked their way along on the pay scale at 52,246. In the new pay scale, they will receive 63,912, which is 11,666 pay increase, and that's a 22% increase in pay for doing the same job they're doing today. When they proposed this contract, they went through, there were no concessions on benefits. And when you look, I also asked the school district to give me a breakdown of the teachers in the system. There were 24% of the teachers in the system currently are in years, the 5 to 6% pay hike. So 76% of the teachers currently in our system will get pay hikes similar to the 3 that I mentioned. They are, the closer you are to the first 5 years, the less percentage it is above the 5. It'll go 5, 6%, but then it'll march up, and it marches up faster as you go deeper. The other thing they did was they looked at the pay scale. If you see, the current one goes 15 years. The new one goes 20 years. So what the negotiations did is they reached down, because people who were off-grid traditionally have gotten about a 3% bump on other contracts. They went 5 years below that to grab those people, bring them up, and give them the similar double-digit percentage pay hike, and then they will return it to 15 years thereafter. But they go down and they grab those people to get them up. So those 15, 17, 20-some% pay increases, that's why year 1 of the contract is $901,000. I agree that our teachers are paid less than they are in other districts. I agree that it would be, there should be some maybe attempt to incentivize the people who have been here a while. However, this is a reach too far in my judgment. Last year, we had a tax hike of 8.08%, I believe, in our taxes for numerous reasons. Between the schools, the town budget got approved, county and state education contributions also went up. So this year, when I'm looking at it, I'm saying I feel obligated that the townspeople shouldn't be looking at another 8% pay increase. But this, if the negotiations had gone to say a more reasonable, in my judgment, approach to say, blow up half the table, not the full table. Don't try to get everything all at once. I feel that if they'd done a graduated step, without going something like $900,000 a year in front of the voters, it might have had a better chance, it would have a better chance of passing. I know I personally have said to the superintendent, I think this is a reach too far. That's just between, I'm not speaking for the committee when I did that. I just think that it would have been much better to make a more reasonable. I don't know anybody's getting a 20-some% increase in their pay for doing the same job. Sorry.
And there were no concessions.
That's what I said. There was no changes in the benefits package. I get it. The superintendent even said it's very good here. So I can't support this. And I know that next year, that's going to run this committee into where we could potentially, if this does not pass, we're going to potentially have another teacher's contract for Ware, which I would hope is more sensitive to the taxpayers' concerns. And you're going to have a teacher's contract with John Stark, and you're probably going to have a para support staff contract for Ware schools again, because they're on 2 years now. They're on the second year, going into the second year, 2 years. So it potentially loads up the teacher's contract, but that's not a reason to just say, well, we need to pass this one this year because we got more coming next year. Not if we're looking at this.
Yeah, I would have thought that if you incentivized the master's degree line,
Yeah.
you get people coming in and they know that they're gonna get a big bump if they get their degree. It keeps them here, I would think keeps them here a few years longer, and then they get the bump when they get the higher degree. I mean, our test scores in the Ware School District are pretty far below the average line. They really do need to come up quite a bit. I would think that having more experienced teachers might help with that. And that would be a sort of a carrot to kind of get people to get to that point and stick around a little longer. That's my opinion.
I'd also say that that's a double-edged sword, because I think that there are school districts that have experienced teachers, but sometimes there's good experienced teachers and there's experienced teachers
Oh, yeah.
that are just they're going along, they're getting there. But, yeah, and that, but maybe that's a harsh way of approaching it, but
Well-
a young teacher coming out of college is energized,
Oh, no doubt.
enthusiastic,
No doubt.
and may turn out to be just as,
Well, that's my point, is
yeah.
you bring in younger teachers and they see a hill there to get to. The salary really bumps up a bunch when you get to that degree level.
Yeah.
And then they're mid-range. I wouldn't incentivize the 20 to 30 year as much. I would want to bring in newer teachers, like you said, and have them get a degree. That's what I see in the corporate world. You want to bring in young talent and let them, and have them stay around.
In the last teacher's contract, the 2-year that they're on now, that was developed to really be competitive in the initial hiring, as I recall.
Right.
And they are competitive, I think, in hiring initial teachers. The problem is in the middle, and I know the superintendent has said that in the days going by, there was not much switching. Once you got into a school district, you kind of stayed there. But now she has said that there are teachers who are bouncing and being hired for their experience, and then they can teach the curriculum that they teach. I mean, they're certified to teach that particular curriculum, which isn't always the case now, where you're forced to put square pegs in round holes and stuff.
I would see most of the benefit of this scale, the way I would like to see it, is that sort of that meaty middle, the between 5 and 15 year with a degree. That's where your heaviest weight goes. You want to attract those people to stay, right? And you incentivize them to be here for 10 years, let's say. But not,
By the same
but not 2
token,
years.
They've got to look at the benefits packages,
Oh, yeah.
because businesses are cutting them, they're expensive. We have a very Cadillac plan for this, and
Right, the estimate is 12% increase, right? That could settle down to a lower number, but it's 12% out of the gate.
I understand that the teachers have to repay their student debt, and so they also have to afford their cost of living, and so these salary ranges, even with the increases projected, are still around the median for the cost of living, and so I know teachers, some of them are working 2 to 3 jobs. And my kids who are in school, the test scores are far below, and many of them, the teachers tell me directly that they don't get paid to tutor anymore, so the parents have to afford private tutoring and such, and so certainly grateful to be resourceful, and be an economist, so it helps with my children and their access to math, but certainly when we look at a lot of other children and then looking at the test scores, I mean, we have to really question, well, you can't really ask for a lot and then see that they're getting paid pennies. and that they're working 2 to 3 jobs, working at Canopy Lake Park, working at the grocery store, and then asked to put together a curriculum, and then also focus on a master's degree, and then repay that. You know, I don't know, I come from the private sector, and so I think many employees, when you ask them, stay on the job for 15, 20 years, and you'll really maybe make 70,000, I think most people would tell you to go kick rocks. I'm gonna go work somewhere else, you know, because most of the private sector, they start at 70,000, especially in this economy, depending on, you know, and this is just based on basic economics, and when you look at, you know, if we think about finance, and we think about business, even private sector teaching, private schools, they're coming in at 70, 80, 90,000. Dairyfield, St. John's, Phillips.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's
those
an
are
apples and
those are
oranges.
Those are
private, those high-priced
education.
private
Right.
You're not
academies.
talking about the
They have
charter
master's
schools,
degrees.
you're not talking
They have
about the Catholic
master's
schools.
degrees. So if we want to talk apples to apples education, private sector and corporations, then let's be realistic about that, because, I mean, somebody making $40,000 a year is probably living at home.
You know, the only other thing I'd say to that, though, is the people in the private sector, I mean, and teachers have chosen that profession, but work schedule is 185 days a year. The guy in the private sector, or he may be working 200 and some days a year, 240 days a year, with 2 weeks vacation or whatever when they start. So, and that person may also be paying back a loan, a student loan. So that's apples to apples. I mean, teacher has a student loan, that person has a student loan, but now we'd ask employee A in the private sector to give employee B in the teaching profession a 26% pay increase for doing the same thing. He's not getting that.
I just don't think that you can expect to have higher test grades if we're going to be paying such low wages.
I don't necessarily think that money being thrown at the problem is going to necessarily increase test
I think that's
scores.
already been proven nationally. Consider too that after 2 years, the cost of this article is $2.17 million. So it's 900 and something thousand for 1 year, 900,000, again, that carries over, and then you're adding 368,000 to that.
Which one of you is a math person that can figure how much this is on a $300,000 home?
We
I
have the.
I can tell you right now that the tax impact in year one is 70 cents. The combined tax impact in year two, compared to this year, is $1.68.
But when you say that, Neil, is that per thousand?
That's per thousand.
So you need to bump that, put the numbers so people can understand where that is for a $300,000 home, a $400,000 home, because the average person doesn't sit and do this.
This teacher's contract alone will increase the taxes on a $300,000 house by $210 next year, for 2024.
350, I think is what we're using. We probably ought to increase that.
Yeah,
350.
300 is not realistic anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, at 350,000, it's $245. And if you're talking about what this person is going to pay in 2025 in taxes just for this contract, compared to what they're paid in 2023, in the second year of the contract, $588 on a $350,000 house.
And people weren't happy with the tax increase this year, even though they voted.
But this is just for one article.
Right.
One of the things that troubles me is the process. There's nothing we can do about it now, but where, you know, they go through this negotiation process, and then if that contract fails, everything is locked in place. There's no second chance at it. It's as if the whole process, including our committee, should be an interim, so that if it was pretty clear that the contract was going to be rejected, that the board could go back to the table and renegotiate to begin with, rather than once the recommendation is made. You know, people follow pretty closely, I think, the finance committee recommendations, not always, but that it, you know, they're locked in with last year's contract, because there's no place for them to go. They can't go back to the table because it's already been voted on by the voters in March. So, just, again, I'm just being a little whiny, I realize,
That's,
but that's, to me, that's kind of
makes
the
sense.
problem with the recommendations coming in at the end and not someplace in the process where whether it's the Board of Selectmen or the school boards can rethink and come back with, you know, a different plan, so to speak. Something to consider for the future. I think if you read the article, not the article.
The RSAs?
no, the contract?
For the ordinance,
Oh, the
for the
ordinance.
Finance Committee, I think it really suggests that, if it doesn't say it clearly, that we make recommendations back to the board or the school boards and so forth. But if those recommendations come at the last minute, there's nothing you can do about it.
But,
You know, it's-
I mean, is it even a possibility for them to involve the finance committee before they finalize these contracts
Well,
for a weigh-in?
for several years, the town did that with the police contract.
How did they do that, Tom? I thought contract negotiations were confidential
Confidential.
until it was approved by both parties.
Well, the police agreed.
Oh.
Who sat in the first year? Who took your place in Concord? Keith.
Erf?
Keith Erf. Yeah, Keith Erf sat in on the negotiations. And I have sat in on the negotiations as a finance committee member, once or twice, I don't know. Not this time around, but,
And were you allowed to discuss the details? Or it remained confidential until,
they,
was approved.
yeah, again, it's the same problem, though. They still remain confidential until the end. But
You had input.
it allowed the finance committee at the end of the process to explain what had gone on with the negotiations, the give and take that got them to where they were. You know, but it didn't change anything from being a decision after the fact, so to speak. But
That
again,
would
it's.
be up to the schools. That'd be great. But I think they have to make,
It would be up to them,
yeah,
yeah, to invite.
correct.
Yeah, well, you know, and again, it's too late in the process, but when Neil mentioned straw poll, you know, it's like if we had maybe 3 weeks ago, or a month ago, taken a straw poll on where we would stand on this contract, there would be a timeline where they could consider some renegotiation. Although it, in fact, this probably took months to work out, so it may or may not have
Right.
happened.
so your point's well taken.
Yeah, it's just, it's
Concern.
always troubled me about the timeline of the finance committee and what can these recommendations be used for, because they're dead ends. You know, this is the recommendation. Take it
May
or
I,
leave it.
may I reiterate in a different way what Bill said? Bill was not saying that the teachers shouldn't get a raise.
Right.
He was saying the teachers should get a raise. But the way the raise was structured and the groups of teachers that got the greatest benefit resulted in a front-loading of the contract that produced a very high tax rate. So the committee, or Bill will correct me if I'm wrong, Bill is not saying that teachers don't deserve a raise, and a decent raise, because we are not competitive. But this particular contract and the amount and the way that large number was distributed doesn't make for acceptance by taxpayers.
Right. Yep.
Other input before we,
Can this be revised, or is this, it's either yay or nay?
yeah,
This is
No, no, they can't.
Negotiate a
Can't change it
contract.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
the point, you know.
All the support and teacher contracts, same way. So John Stark has a support contract as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the gist of what we would be saying is deserve a raise, but this is a bridge too far.
Agreed.
If we
Okay.
vote that way.
Yeah, if we vote that way, yes. Yeah, right.
Well, even if,
Just a quick question, and I apologize if this is redundant. Is the contract built into the default or proposed budget, or is it separate in terms of the amount that's
It would
noted,
be,
if
it
that
would be
makes
the
sense?
existing salaries that would be in the contract, in the budgets. And then the budget would be revised depending on the teacher's contract. In other words, after the fact, if it passes, then the budget would be revised and the new numbers would be put into the proposed budget or default budget or whatever.
I see.
So, no, when you look at the budget.
Thank you.
It's their existing salaries that would be in it. Or, actually, probably the salaries from the existing pay scale.
Right.
In
From the
other,
last,
in other words, if
last
somebody
contract.
moved up a step in the existing pay scale, that's what would be reflected in the proposed budget.
And in the default budget. Because it's a
commitment,
contract that the
contract
voters
commitment.
approve. We approve the current contract, so it's in both the default and the proposed budget.
So if you take it, just for
Current,
comparison,
that's the current salary scale that
Right.
we approved 2 or 3 years ago.
so if you look at a step in the existing pay scale, the raise that the teacher would get moving from, say, step 4 to step 5, would be plugged into the budget at that rate.
right, it's already
So
plugged in.
it's not like their pay would be frozen.
No.
And those positions could also be vacant?
Pardon me?
And those positions could also be vacant if we're talking about projected salary increases? Those could just not be filled, similar
Right.
to the proposed budget and the cuts that they made?
The budget only includes existing planned staff, but they just cut 4, so it's that number.
So in other words, in a corporation, if you had to meet your budget for the following year and you know that your pay scale is set in stone and you know that you're trying to meet a budget, you just would have promotion through attrition and you wouldn't actually fill those positions. And so am I looking at it the same way, where in terms
Depends
of
on the
voting it?
corporation and what tax structure.
Well,
they're gonna
generally
increase.
speaking, right, so in terms of the positions, just like we talked about them cutting up to 4 positions to bring down the proposed budget below the default, if we go ahead and recommend, you know, what I see is almost, just like a generic number for an estimated increase, they could have positions that are vacant that would, if we were to project, that then essentially would be reducing the budget even further because they wouldn't fill all of those positions.
It would be money
If
back
they
at the end
not-
of the year
I see.
for
Yeah,
them.
that,
But
go ahead.
if the school district doesn't fill positions, regardless of how many are budgeted, if they budget 100 positions and they only fill 90 of them, the money for the 10 positions that they did not fill is available to the school board to spend any way they wish during the year. If in fact, at the end of the year, they haven't spent that, then that money automatically goes to reduce the next year's property taxes. They don't have a choice in that. The selectmen don't get involved as they do in the case of the town, where they can decide if there's money left over from the budget, whether they should hold that in a reserve or whether they should return that to taxpayers to offset the next year's taxes.
I see.
But they can't take the money they saved from those 10 positions that they kept vacant and use that to implement a contract that the voters didn't approve.
Correct.
Got
And they
it.
can't use that to increase current teachers' salaries, because there's a contract that the voters did approve for the current year that sets the salaries for those teachers. So one of the reasons why there might be $100,000 or $200,000 surplus in the school budget at the end of the year is if in fact they can't fill some of those positions and they take a specialist, for example, and put him or her in the classroom. And the salary for the position they couldn't fill falls to the bottom line.
Got it.
And the 100 or 200,000 has been, last year it was 636,000 got returned to offset tax. The year before, that's a COVID outlier, was 952,000, and then 576, 789, 324. So it sounds like a lot of money. Percentage-wise, it's not on, say, an $18 million budget, but it's still a lot of money that has been returned from both school districts. We get a portion of John Stark because the return gets split, but Ware Schools comes back, and it's,
If you look at the revenue estimates,
yeah.
you'll see there's a line there where they estimate how much money they will not spend and return to taxpayers. This year,
So 100.
it's a measly $100,000. And the reason for that, the reason why I said measly,
Yeah.
is because in the past, there's been a lot of money that they've gotten from ESSER and COVID and federal money, which they've used to pay for expenses rather than use taxpayer dollars, and therefore return the $500,000 and $600,000 that was mentioned. That's no longer the case, that money no longer exists, and so they're making a good faith estimate as to what they will get. Frankly, I was speaking to the finance person, Chris Roy, and he said they were also looking at $200,000, but decided to be on the safe side and only put in $100,000. Chances are it's going to be between 2 and 3, but conservative fiscal,
That's returned back to the town to reduce the tax impact?
yes.
I
they-
see. And so if we were to utilize the same example, to your point on the math of an increase of a tax rate of approximately $550, that does not include the return?
No, it does, because the amount of money that we're raising by taxes, and that's the money that we're talking about here, is already based on the fact that $100,000 is going to be returned.
And so that's based on the 100,000, but not the, that's a conservative number based on Chris Roy's 200 to 300, so it would actually be reduced further based
Yeah,
on the
if-
actuals projected?
If in fact it comes out at 250, then another 150,000, in addition to the 100,000, will be available to reduce taxes. But at this time, they don't know that, and they don't want to take a chance that they mislead taxpayers by overestimating what they'll return.
So therefore, we don't know that either.
Nobody knows
No,
that.
and their goal is to hire all positions anyway, so.
They certainly need to hire all those
Clarification.
teaching positions.
We have in the past, a couple of years especially, in our preamble that we send out with a flyer, we've addressed that issue you just talked about. We said, because we say, we project just the raw numbers and the conservative estimates for return. We've kind of looked at the last 4 or 5 years of what has been returned to offset, and kind of thrown out a COVID outlier and tried to make the best guess possible. And last year, we estimated last year, the amount we projected was going to be like 245,000 from the town, which we didn't get. 502,000 Ware Schools, Stark, 390,000. That's as much of a guess as anything else is what they are. But at least it gives the taxpayers, hey, here's a worst-case scenario, but historically, we've gotten this much back, so it may ease some of that. What happened last year is, we didn't get back as much as we projected, and the two little things that you get on the tax bill down there that says county and state education, if you look at those numbers, they went up last year. So that had something that we have no control over, and we didn't project. So that's why you got an 8% tax hike. So I just say that, but that is, we try to kind of put that information out there, so they say, well, maybe it's not going to be as bad as what that says. So just to give people a better educated vote.
Yeah, and that's what's important. I just don't want there to be a lot of assertion and then, voters, the taxpayers look at it and then feel as though our perspective is set in stone, that it's, we've done a good job in the prior year to make sure that there's an over, under, and median stated. But just to kind of reaffirm that it's all estimates, we don't know what we don't know, and just being very clear about that.
Okay, let's get back on target for this one, okay, so we can move on. Didn't mean to cut you off, but,
I was done.
so we keep our agenda going here. So we're, our discussion is on the contract. Was there a motion on the floor?
No. Not yet.
Okay. Then I think we're ready for one,
All right, I'll make a motion to recommend Article 4.
to recommend
Do
article.
not recommend the contract?
No, he has to say recommend,
I say to recommend the contract,
Yeah.
Article 4.
and that could fail
Oh,
to pass.
I see. That's the traditional way we've been doing it?
I believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last couple of years, I believe, right?
Could you repeat your motion, because I'm not sure I got it.
All right, I make a motion that we recommend positively Article 4 for the contract,
The Ware School Teachers Contract.
Ware School District's contract.
Second?
Okay. Elizabeth, you're seconding?
Yes.
Okay. Live count? This is to recommend.
Any other discussion?
I don't see a lot of hands going up.
Oh, are you taking a vote?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
To recommend.
All right, thank you.
All those in favor of recommending the contract?
Okay. With two,
That's two.
those.
Those opposed,
Those opposed to
recommended.
James.
To-
Then we'll have to do it over again,
Yeah.
the other way
Yeah.
around, okay?
9.
So now we need a motion to not recommend Article 4.
Motion to not recommend Article 4.
Second?
Was there a second? You seconded?
Second.
Okay. Those in favor of not recommending Article 4?
That's 9.
Those opposed to not recommending Article 4? It's like a very
Once we're
similar.
done with the
It's a,
type of question.
it's a formality, you have to do both.
I blame you. Okay,
It's a weird way to do that, but. Have a
those are
question.
the only two in the warrant article, the Ware School. So let's look at John Stark.
Tom, we have a
Can I
question.
have a quick, I'm just curious, what is the reasoning behind the recommending and not recommending voting twice?
You know, I'm not gonna answer that because I think, I've always been a little clueless as to why we do it that
This is
way.
how we've always
It's
done
about the ambiguity.
it. Okay,
You have to do both?
Yeah,
Yeah, I thought so.
yeah.
It's what this committee has
Okay.
done,
Sure.
but that's not
Okay.
required.
Yeah, that's right.
I've
That's
got
the way it is.
I've got the lingo, I think, but I want to make sure that I
Don't look for
capture
me.
Elizabeth and the reason why you support, because we get to put a comment in there on
Yeah, we did
the members in the
minority.
minority support the contract because, and what, if you had 2 or 3 sound bites you want in there?
I'd say retention and reduced turnover, competitiveness, economic landscape, inflation.
Okay, basically, you think that if they get this contract, it'll help ease the burden on retention, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I think they're
Right.
interested in being competitive and hiring mid-level teachers away from other districts.
That's right.
who-
We're preventing teachers from leaving.
And also hiring,
Attracting.
Yes.
attracting. Does that sound good?
Yeah, it does attract
Okay.
talent. Yes.
Okay.
Carrie, did you have
I
something?
agree.
You have enough for both, Bill?
I got enough.
Did, I guess, point of order, I guess, question. Did we say we were gonna have a minority report on every article? Or if it was a split? Did we, I forget what we did last year.
Well, we didn't, if nobody votes in the minority, you don't have a minority.
No, if it was like, 6-5.
No, we went last year
Every time?
with,
Yeah, we went around on that and actually.
Yeah, I forgot.
Thought, back then, but I changed my mind after the votes, that if it was close, we should do both. If not, then just the majority, but I think it worked out very well the way that we did it last year, and it gave us more credibility, like giving the minority opinion, even if it was one person.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to clarify.
It's very transparent.
Yep.
yep. Because people may look at, hey, there's 2 or 3 people vote against this, why did they vote against it? They're not telling me, you know?
Yep.
Keep them informed.
Yep.
John Stark has a similar 4 articles, only 2 that we're concerned with. Article 3 is their operating budget. Proposed budget of, well, you can read it, it's right in front of you. Not a great deal of difference.
Bill, you got anything on this?
I wasn't on the
Yeah,
start
I
board,
can-
I didn't dig into that
I
one as
can
much.
say a couple things, and other people who were there can also, I guess. The proposed budget is a 2.36% increase over last year. The default is 2.02% over last year. One of the big drivers is that insurance again. It's the same with both schools. It's 12.1% estimate. Could come in lower, but we don't know. But it's budgeted for that 12% increase in insurance costs. That was a big driver. The SAU share went up a little bit on both schools. The cost of paying into the SAU for their services. Some transportation costs, like both schools, went up a little bit.
Contracted services also went up for out-of-district placements, and transportation costs along with that went up to, bus those kids that need to be placed out of district. Those
Right.
costs they can't control.
For mostly special education purposes,
Right.
right?
Another big cost was they get accredited every 10 years, I believe. This year, they're going to have a $15,000 cost that they have to pay to have the people come out and do a site study so that they can get reaccredited. And then that cost will come out of the budget next year.
15,000, I think it was, right?
Yeah, 15.
Yeah. Supplies went up a little bit. They're also increasing the population at the school this year. There was a class of kids that had a big bubble in them, and they're hitting 10th grade, so I think it was 50,
Yeah, I think it's 50.
50 up, 73 down in the Ware district. So that was a little bit of cost added to that, for that.
Well, as a chair, I'd rather not make the motion, but I would certainly support recommending, because there's really a very little difference between the two. And from what Tom just said, there's some, Tom and Kerry, some good reasons for that slight difference between the default and the,
I would only add that over the years, John Stark has been very cost-conscious, has had very small increases over the decades, actually. As their population went down, they figured out ways to offer their curriculum, and remember, they have different teaching situations than a middle school or an elementary school. They figured out ways to offer the courses in alternate semesters and things like this that enabled them to reduce their expenses without significantly impacting the curriculum or student activities. So I agree with Tom that their budget should be supported. It is less than the rate of inflation, their increase.
would you like to make that a motion?
Sure. I move that we recommend the John Stark proposed budget.
I second that. Motion.
Discussion?
Yeah, I just, I'll just throw one other, just so the information's out there. It's only a $49,000 difference between the proposed and the default. It's very small, but they have, as most school districts do, they have a very conservative estimate of how much is going to be held back or would be available to return. And they've returned a couple $100,000 historically, 200,000, some that would come back to Ware District, I think it was last year. I may be wrong on that number. I don't have that number right in front of me, but for a $49,000 difference, we're going to get back 200, so they will probably be able to function with the default. The only reason I say it is because the 49,000, if we voted against that, I don't know what we're going to have a discussion on the next article, but that's going to cost $152,000 in the same year. And if we want the support staff to get, to approve that, even though it doesn't offset it, you could say they're going to get by on the default because they always have returned a lot more than that. And that's $49,000 the taxpayers could save. And we still want to give the support staff contract here. And remember, this is the school district that has 350,000 plus the 400-some thousand sitting in a contingency fund that they voted in 2 years ago. And that pile is sitting there that can be used for whatever reason they want, but they have to, the school board has to approve, they have to have a public hearing and approve it to drain money from that. So there's any number of pots that can, and I just throw that out there. I think it's a reasonable budget, but I also, I'm hell-bent on saying 8+% last year was a big load on the taxpayers. And anywhere we can look at stuff that's reasonable, a reasonable approach, I say, hey.
We voted last year split on the same argument, on that same argument on John
Right.
Stark. It was $65,000. This is even less.
Yes.
And the SAU share for the John Stark School is $58,000.
Well, yeah, that was, a lot of it was a position. That
Yeah,
they
the
moved.
movement.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
moved that facilities
Right.
position.
Yeah,
But when they moved the position to
they took it
they
away.
took it
The
away.
SAU, they reduced the
Correct.
money that we were spending at each individual district for
Right.
that position. So
Right.
in theory, it's not quite net zero, but it should be pretty close to
Yeah.
a net zero
Yeah, it was,
arrangement.
it was a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
But once again, they have not done anything to look at their benefits package.
Well, they don't, that potential is next year when they have a teacher's contract. They don't have a teacher's contract this year. Well, I don't know what went into the next article on that.
No, it's just support staff.
Yeah.
There's benefits there too, but
They get better, yeah, I don't, the support staff here does not, but they do.
Yes,
Yes,
because that came up at the meeting the other night.
yeah, and I'm not.
Tom, in past years, the committee has taken the position that we go through the budget, through each of the items before us, and vote on them. But then at the end, after we see what we've done collectively, all of the actions we've taken and the total impact on the tax rate, there's an opportunity to go back and reconsider any article or any vote that we took. So that if, say, we come up with a 7% increase, and I'm making this up, and Bill says, I'd like us to go back and look at the Stark budget where we recommended the proposed budget, because, again, I'm putting words in Bill's mouth. If we save that 49,000, the 7% increase goes down to 6%.
I thought, I'm not sure what the wording was, but I don't think we did it that way, Neil, because it means that we could reconsider absolutely everything.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm not, I think that we limited it to only reconsider if certain changes were made, like at the deliberative session. That we would only reconsider them if there were a change made at the deliberative sessions. Because that's been my experience in the last couple of years.
Last year we didn't reconsider unless you did it after I left.
The problem with that approach is then each of us, well, I, for example, don't want to see another 8% tax increase. So if I don't have an opportunity to reconsider, then I would have to vote, I would have to go home, figure out how I'm going to vote on each article, and be unpersuaded by any discussion that goes here.
Yeah, what I'm just saying that, I know that last year, and I believe the year before that as well, that we limited our revoting on only articles that were changed at the deliberative session. Now, whether you agree with that or not, I mean, that's certainly open for your opinion.
Well, the 6 years I sat on the finance committee, what Neil's talking about, we did. So I understand what you're saying, but the 6 years I was there, that is the practice.
Would that be up to the committee?
That's kind of a
Yeah, the
standard
committee
Robert's
makes it.
Rules of Order kind of thing, right? You can, at the end of the meeting, you can vote to reconsider
Reconsider anything?
If the committee, if you're
Yes.
following Robert's rules.
Right.
You can reconsider something no later than the meeting after which it was decided. You can't wait and 6 months later say, I'd like to reconsider something we did 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So there's a time limit on it under
Yes.
Robert's rules. But the committee doesn't have to follow Robert's rules. We can change whatever, we can set up whatever rules we agree to.
What it allowed us to do was, as Neil's talking about, you know, you would, right now, some of us may be leaning for giving them the proposed budget. But I'm not going to vote for an 8% increase or anything like that going forward. So our situation allowed us to go back through everything again and really sit down and say, okay, where do we need to cut in order to work with this? So that we could make really good decisions with the taxpayers in mind. And it's up to everybody how you want to do
Yeah,
that.
I think that's what I was gonna say, that it's really up to the committee at this point, whether we want to consider anything at the end of the process or limit it to changes at the deliberative session. So I was just saying what has happened the last year, and I think the last 2 years. And Neil, your memory is of a longer standing. I don't mean it that way, but it's just that you're saying that over a period of time when you were on the committee went back and considered each thing at the end of the process.
And I'm
So-
trying to remember if in fact we ever actually did vote affirmatively to change something. And
Yeah.
we did?
Yes.
Because I can't remember what it was. But having that option to go back made it possible for me, and I suppose a lot of other people, to vote appropriately on each article and then look at the entire package and say, oh my God, what have I done?
All right, well, let's just take a little poll on that and see where people stand. If you agree that we should look at the whole package at the end of our process to see if there are changes we want to make, please raise your hand. Okay, we're good. That's why we're good.
And to add, that's why we did this spreadsheet last year, and I've got it drafted for this year, because there's 25 articles for the town. And we're voting on school budgets right now, and we could get through the whole thing and realize, oh, that was too much. I mean, that's what we're saying, I think.
Wait, I've lost track. Do we have a motion on the floor on this or not?
We,
We did.
No, there was no
We
motion.
do not, okay. Then I'll,
No, I made a motion.
Yeah,
Oh, you-
Neil made a
I
motion.
move that we approve the proposed John
okay.
Stark
And
budget.
did we have a second on that?
Yes.
I seconded it.
Yes,
Okay.
good.
Seconded.
So, all of those who, or any other discussion first? All of those in favor of this motion to recommend the proposed budget for John Stark, raise your hand. You get a count?
Sounds like five
looked
to
like
me.
5.
All right, all of those who are opposed to recommending, please raise your hand. 6. That's what I got.
Now you have to reverse it.
Okay.
We don't have to. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
I move we not recommend the John Stark proposed budget.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion on that? All those in favor of not recommending the John Stark proposed budget?
Okay, I'll switch.
I think,
But not recommending.
yeah, not
You changed your
recommending.
vote.
Yes, I changed my vote.
Okay, just checking.
Was that 8? Okay.
Let's see.
Those who are opposed to not recommending, raise your hand. 8-3. The teacher's contract? No, this is a paraprofessional, not, it's
Can I just get a
support
couple-
staff.
Get a couple bullets. 8 no's. Besides the things I said, I kind of want to say that it's reasonable between the two, and the total percentage is less than cost of living. However, I may slip something in there how we want to be sensitive to the tax increases that occurred last year, and where the difference is very slight, that cost savings there can be used to better use elsewhere, recognizing that the district has historically returned in excess of that difference
Well, that other.
each year.
Yeah,
And the
that to
fund.
me,
I kind of don't, I don't know if I really,
Ideas.
I think that is the main point, that
Yeah.
they typically return more than
yeah,
that.
yeah. The other one is just salt in the wound. I don't want
Well,
to,
they opted not to use any of it this year.
yeah, yeah.
There was an Article 5 that was gonna come up, but then they didn't.
So it's still kind of lingering, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
Can it?
No, not lingering this year. No, I meant, but, yeah,
Oh, yeah, the account's still there, but
Yeah.
they chose not to use it this year.
okay. Yeah, I got, and then we want to say on the plus, the yeses, I want to say that
Because I would say
the difference is,
so small that,
yeah, so small a difference, and the difference is less than the COLA increase, you know. Okay, I can handle it. Got it.
Now, last year, didn't all the articles pass, which is what led to the 8.2% increase?
pretty much, yeah.
Yeah,
What's that?
Wasn't that because all the articles passed last year, and that's what
A
led
lot
to
of them
the
did pass, but it was a combination. It was, we didn't get quite the return that was projected, and like I said, the county and state education costs increased that we have no control over. From, I've got that number, but I don't need to belabor it at this point. But there were other factors that increased it last year. But a lot did get approved last year, yes.
Support staff contract.
somebody wanna make a motion?
Can we have a little discussion first? What's the deal on the staff contract?
Sure, well, you wanna do discussion ahead of time?
Oh.
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
Yep, it's an 8-cent tax impact, first of all. The average salary, this is for support staff, again, this is administrative, custodial, lunch, non-professional, non-teacher positions. It's 152,548 cost this year, 39,000 next year. The average salary percent increase is, not the average, the high and the low is 11.5 to 2.5. So, different people at different step levels and different jobs are getting different percentages. But the high is 11.5, which is a lot different than the many 20-plus increases for the teacher's contract that we just looked at. In contrast, the only thing that I have that was concerning, and I need a little help from somebody, because I wrote a note down, but I can't confirm this, was that it was a 50% increase over the last contract? Is that
what?
true?
That's what I heard.
I have a note here, it was 50% higher than the last contract, 2 years ago. I can't confirm that, so, I didn't know if anybody had that number.
To be fair, they also said they're having a very difficult time doing it.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Correct. Right, yeah, that they're underpaid and they're losing people. They can't keep support staff on in the
Their
school.
exact quote was Dunkin' Donuts gets a lot of the people they need.
Yeah, you make more Dunkin' Donuts than you do
Correct.
many of these jobs.
Do you know the percentage increase, the average percentage? Or just the top? and
I
the-
just have the top and the bottom, I don't have the average.
Would you repeat those, Tom, please, the top and the bottom?
11.5 is the high and 2.5 is the low.
I don't know the percentage, but the current average hourly rate currently, or the current one, is $18.43. The projected for 24-25, the average hourly rate will be $20.30. And in 25-26, the average hourly rate would be $20.85. That's
What was
really
that
low.
first number? This year, the average?
$18.43. So yes, you could
A
probably.
$2, $2.50 raise
It's a 10.2%
Working at Target or Dunkin'
increase
Donuts.
on average.
on average.
At the public hearing with John Stark, one of the things that I said was that, particularly when you're talking about paraprofessionals, people who are working with the student, they have to have more training than takes to make coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. And nothing wrong with making coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, but it's a different level of education that we want if they're gonna be working with our students. Of course, this is broader than just that, but still, that's a significant portion of this is paraprofessionals, which, people working directly in a tutoring capacity with students.
Okay.
Tom, did you say that there were a lot of vacancies as a result of this?
They said they were having trouble keeping people. They didn't itemize the vacancies, but they said that they couldn't keep people. And I want to correct what I said earlier. My notes, I'm looking at my better notes here. The average increase in year one is 11.5, not the high. Currently, year one increase averages 11.5%.
What's year two?
2.5 on grid, 3% off grid. So those weren't high and lows. That was year one, year two. I apologize.
Oh,
The range for year one was 7.5 to 18,
yeah, and that is
which makes more sense.
another reason, one of the comments I brought up, because somebody mentioned it, the contract is front-loaded, and my comment was, yes, it's front-loaded because that's where the need is right now, not 2 years from now.
I understand the front loading and I understand the need. But I brought this up at the meeting when it was discussed. I still have a problem with the benefits. Their benefit package is a Cadillac plan and benefits are expensive. 12.1% is a lot of money.
This is a 10% increase in healthcare premiums paid by the school. So it's a 10% bonus, 10%, reduction for the employee, paid for by the school. And 2 additional holidays.
Could you repeat that about the health benefit?
It's an increased healthcare premium from 50 to 60%.
The school is now paying 50 and they will pay 60. So in addition to an 11.5% increase on average,
On average.
there will be a reduction.
No, an
No.
increase.
No, the employee will pay less.
Less.
Correct.
Yeah.
The problem for the employee is that the cost of health insurance is going up 12.1%. No, so
Estimated,
as your
yeah.
paycheck, basically, you're even on the health
Yeah.
insurance.
Yeah.
Even though the district is picking up more money because of the price inflation of health insurance, and we've seen it in all of the town and schools contracts, that's, as it turns out, not a benefit. On the other hand, they're not getting hit with a higher cost,
Right, but on the other hand.
Which
if you
would wipe
shop
out
your
their
insurance
raise.
and you
which would wipe out their raise.
Yeah,
fixed your benefit
I-
program, it would have been a much better win for them.
I
I believe
thi-
on the
I-
national level, the insurance increased between 18 and 20% on the most recent print.
Yeah, that's,
They did admit that the actual percentage increase on insurances came in 5 points lower than the estimate that was put out now. There's no guarantee that's gonna happen again, but
I mean, in past years.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. They might estimate 12, for example, and it comes in at 7. But there's no guarantee of that happening.
The 12 is not an estimate. The 12 is what they were told by their insurer is the guaranteed maximum
Maximum.
increase.
Yeah.
In some years, they've come in less than that, but everybody's very nervous for the reasons you just suggested, that this year it's gonna come in at 12.1.
Yeah, it could.
Depends a lot on where your insurance company does their exposures.
Bill?
The only thing I say, I want to be careful how we throw around percentages. When you're talking $17 to $20, and it's potentially a 10% increase, that's only $2 an hour. When you're talking about a 10% change in insurance, that's 10% on a bigger number. And like you say, if they were paying the same share of this insurance premium, they're going to be paying a lot more than what they're getting, even though we're talking the same percentage.
From my perspective, this is a group of people that we've all read about in terms of pay level, that are moving around rapidly. And this happened some years ago, but last year and the year before, you didn't see McDonald's advertising hamburgers. They were advertising help wanted on their signs.
Correct.
And as a result of the inflation, the COVID-induced inflation, not today, but over the past several years, wages for entry and service kinds of jobs have really changed dramatically, much more so than for other levels. If we don't keep up, we're not going to have lunch ladies. So as much as I will be frugal in other areas, in this area, I think we very much need to support this contract.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Those in favor of recommending the Article 4, the not paraprofessional, support staff contract, please raise your hand.
That's everybody.
Looks unanimous.
I'm keeping the score up there too on my spreadsheet.
Now, this is not paraprofessional, correct?
No, it's paraprofessionals, custodians, lunch ladies,
So it's all of them.
all of the support
Correct.
staff.
Two-thirds?
Everybody that's
Yeah,
not a
roughly.
teacher.
That's about 70,
Everybody that's not a teacher
69,
About,
yeah.
or administrator.
or administrator, yeah, well, yeah.
I'd like to go over this tonight a little bit, just to make sure it's accurate.
Okay, is there any need, I don't see as it would be, to have Jackie Cole come back for any reason?
No, because she can't
Because
address.
Because she asked, okay. So I think we're all set with the schools, and I mentioned to review the minutes for the next time, so that we can get those caught up. Tom, would you like to go through this at all?
I would if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just review it and also make sure it's accurate, if the calculations are correct and all that. So, yeah, so like last year, if you were here, we had this checklist of all the articles, school in town, with their bottom line cost and then a calculated tax impact, and then we keep track of the votes. I have it repeated 3 times. One is if everything passes, what the cost and the tax impact are, and we can say if we pass everything, this is the new tax rate estimated, and this is roughly estimated what your increase would be for a $350,000, $400,000 house, like in an aggregate level, right? Then I have another section which I'll manage is all articles fail, so just defaults go through, and we can see the contrast between everything and nothing being passed, right? And you can see here that contracts are 0, budgets are defaults, and then everything, all the other warrant articles is 0. We calculate what that tax impact would be. And then as we go, we can keep track of what we recommended, and so we can keep, accumulating what the tax impact would be. So I have a yes, no here, and it'll automatically flip between proposed and default, or 0 and cost, right? And then, again, at the end of the sheet, there's a total cost, a total tax impact, comparison to last year's number, what the difference is, what last year's tax would be for the different houses at last year's rate, and then what our, based on the new rate, what would the new tax be and what's the difference, okay? So you can see here that if I've done it right, that, you know, the tax rate would drop, if we passed nothing, and this is the middle column, the tax rate would drop and there would be a tax reduction, for example. So, and again, what I want to do right now, if we could, is just validate the calculations, and then maybe we can just quickly walk through the remainder and touch upon it. So what I did for proposed budgets, I took the bottom line cost that I got from Chris Roy. That's, you know, the budget minus the revenue. Again, it's an estimate, but it's pretty close, you know, it's not gonna change much. And I took the tax impact, which is basically this cost divided by the net asset value that we were given from Beth and Naomi, which is down here, the assessed value divided by 1,000. So this number, 1291315, is what you use to set the tax impact of an article. And so I did that division, which is basically this cost divided by that number.
In other words, if we vote for a truck, a fire truck, that costs $1,291,315, it will raise the tax rate by $1.
By $1.
But if we can buy that fire truck for $675,000 roughly, it'll raise the tax rate by 50 cents. If we could get it for $100,000, it would raise the tax rate by 12 cents.
Well, you have to pump it.
Pulled by horses.
It wouldn't have anything to work.
So what I did was I calculated the tax impact for each article against its bottom line cost, or its cost. Budgets are bottom line, everything else is pretty much price tag, right? Like the contract is 901,000 and change, you know, for this year, being a 70 cent impact per thousand. And you can see the where proposed budget, same thing, I got the bottom line cost from Beth, 347. The one thing I'm not clear on, and maybe Neil and others can help me here, is when you get all of those, you just simply add them together to get a total estimated tax rate?
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Does it
but
work that way?
it does, but you're going to be misleading if you have no state property tax.
Correct.
So at the very least, use last year's numbers for both of
Yeah,
those.
so $1.02 was last year's county. I don't have last
I
year's state.
got it.
Do you have it?
Yep. Keep talking while I find it.
So, yeah, so these last two are the additional components to the tax rate. We don't know what they are until much later. We'll use last year's numbers. There's no cost to them, it's just it's a tax impact given to us. There might be a cost, but I don't think we,
State education, $1.46.
That's all?
That's all it historically has. It's, state education, the year before was 55 cents. And it went, I'm sorry, it was $1.10, because I got to double it on my tax bill, 'cause the last thing.
it went up.
It went from $1.10 to $1.46, so it was an increase of 36 cents. And
So is it $1.46?
it's $1.46 on my tax bill. Yeah, that's the gospel.
Naomi, you don't happen to know that number, do you? No?
That's what it is.
I can confirm with Beth tomorrow.
It's
I believe you.
$1.40, no, I've got the tax bill
you
right
got
here,
it.
$1.46.
$1.46.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, good.
and the one on the
Consider yourself
County.
confirmed.
I like it.
county is $1.02. Before that, the county was 88 cents. I mean, it went to $1.02.
Yeah.
So that's kind of,
Yeah,
a little 14 cents there and another,
and we
yeah,
don't,
that's what impacted last year's tax bill.
we don't know what's gonna happen this
No,
year.
we don't
either.
know. Yeah.
And so when we're looking at the whole package, you can see that if you take that statewide tax out, that drives our tax rate up, well, $1.46. I mean, it's a noticeable number there, so. Okay, so what I do is, and by the way, this cost is not accurate because there are some articles in the town, for example, like the trailer caddy right here, that has a cost of $53,000, but there's no tax impact because it's coming from a fund that's already established. So it doesn't add to the tax rate, but I wanted to keep it in there as a cost, just so we could be aware of, it's not free, right?
Right.
It's money it's like federal taxes, we've already paid it. But it's not gonna impact our bill, so, not this year anyways. So the difference, if we pass everything, it's a $2.28 difference. And then, you know, right here, these are your tax differences depending upon your house. These guys, so. That's if we passed everything, and we already voted against a couple things, so what I'm gonna do is in that third category, well, I'll just do it, I'll show you what I'm doing here. So this is a yes, a no, and a yes, and so I just go over here and I put yes, no, no, yes, and it pulls the value in from either proposed or default. Did you have a question?
I do actually.
Yep.
For the state and the county, or was it the statewide property tax in the county, we can reasonably assume that that's gonna go up a little, right?
Yeah,
So
probably.
wouldn't we want to put an inflationary rate on that, just so that we're actually having a more reasonable number than the historical?
They don't always go up.
They don't always,
No.
I'm
No,
not,
last year was a bump for them.
okay.
So we really have no way of recommending on those, so it is what it will be. And the Department of Revenue Administration sends a packet to the town that would include those before the town sets their tax rate. And they also have to wait for the schools to get all their work finished and that all, so that when the town gets to the point of setting their tax rate, which would be next fall, they would have all the material from the schools as well as from the county and the state tax.
And sometimes the state legislature puts money into the pot. The statewide property tax has to raise $363 million. One year, the state legislature had extra money for some reason, and they put $100 million into it. So instead of having to raise, all the towns contribute and raise 363, we only had to raise 263. If they've done that, and I don't know if they have, if they've done that, that number could change. It could be higher or lower. The municipal association may know, may be able to tell us.
Like a little bit of a swag looking forward.
Yeah, well, the legislature passed the budget.
Oh, it's
and
already
it's
done.
either in there or not. I just don't know.
Okay. So if it's okay, I'll record, you know, people can keep track, you know, we got the
Yeah.
minutes and everything, but I'll record what the votes are as we go. Anybody can challenge it, obviously. I'm also showing what the
Terrific tool.
cost is for each of these sort of one-time spending items, like Neil threw out $245 for the teacher's contract if it passes, so I think being able to, you know, look at those numbers as we go is helpful.
No, this is a terrific tool. I really appreciate the time you put into this, and thank you for doing it.
You-
Yeah, I agree. It's very helpful.
Could I suggest that you make it a little bit simpler by eliminating the cents? We're
I like
sort
the
of beyond
cents.
that at
Well,
this
I
point.
like accuracy.
Actually, let me tell you why I put it back in there. This 10-wheel truck has cents on it. The estimate came in with 64 cents.
You could really round it. and
I
don't think
can.
very many of us would care.
I'm happy to do that.
It makes it simpler.
But that's why I did it. But I'll, yeah, I can get rid of that easily enough.
Finance chair can't deal with cents.
We can, but geez.
Yeah, this is all estimate anyway. It's very,
Things up.
it's very good estimate, but it's, you know.
So Laura,
64
you
cents.
take all your pennies and change and don't put anything into the penny container at the supermarket?
No.
So I think it's interesting to note that, again, for perspective, if nothing passes, the tax rate would actually go down. And the tax bill would reduce by a certain amount.
And what would happen to our roads?
Exactly, I'm just saying, you know, the bookends here.
They'd go down.
Well, it won't go up if nothing passes. How's that? That's my point.
Yeah.
It's either gonna be an increase or a decrease if nothing passes. I'm not suggesting that
Right.
happen, but I like to look at the range of things. And
Yeah.
where do we fit in that range? And I think, my vote might shift a little bit if I think that there's some things we need and there's other things that might be, I'm on the fence with. And if I'm looking at a $800 increase here in my taxes, then I'm gonna think differently about some things, potentially. So,
No, great job.
I
Thank
don't
you.
wanna vote in a vacuum, I guess is what I'm saying.
Now, the public hearing on the town budget continues on Monday.
Right. This conservation warrant was addressed, but there's no cost or anything
Yeah.
associated with it yet.
But until that public hearing is complete, Naomi, correct me if I'm wrong, but anything could change, is that correct? So I don't know how much time we want to put in tonight, looking at something when we perhaps should go home and rest up for next week.
Yep.
Except that the selectmen, we can check with Naomi, but I think the selectmen have basically finished with the budget. They've been working on the warrant articles. Is that correct, Naomi?
Yeah, there's been no recommendation on any of
No, but have they finished basically with the budget, or are they?
them. We finished a lot of things, but you haven't made a recommendation yet.
Well, they
They haven't recommended.
haven't recommended any article yet,
Right.
that's what I'm saying.
But are they tweaking it right now? I think is what Neil's asking, do they anticipate
I
tweaking?
don't know, you'd have to ask all five of them. I don't know what they're doing. There wasn't a lot of discussion on Monday.
Correct.
We tweaked the week before till midnight at 12:30.
So Monday, for the public hearing, basically, they'll pick up where they left off
We're not turning the clock back, yeah.
and then go back and make,
We're gonna start with the conservation article.
yeah, then go back and make recommendations.
And the fire department's coming back with a dollar amount.
Right. The raises are not set.
Sounds like we'd be premature and,
Right.
I don't want to vote for anything until
yeah.
they've settled
you
all
gotta-
the warrants.
Kinda gotta wait.
But I think we
Warrant
need
articles.
to plan, Wednesday could be a long meeting.
Yeah.
It could be a very long meeting.
What I'll do in the meantime is I'll take all the school stuff, I'll do up the words to go with the recommendation, to get them out to everybody by Sunday night.
That'd be great, thank you.
And then you can come back in and throw darts at me. And say,
No, I don't think anybody
No,
else
no,
wants to be in
word-
charge of the blurbs.
wordsmith. I was not a great English student, just so you know, so usually I can take positive feedback.
Well, I think your work has been priceless.
Oh, yeah. You got a job for life.
You should not have
You
to
do-
ever get off
you do
this
too.
committee.
You got a job.
I got a question, Tom.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm happy to send this, I sent this out, I think today.
Yeah,
I did PDF and Excel. Does that work for everybody? I mean,
Yep.
feel free to take the Excel and,
Alan made it print out, so it must have worked fine.
okay.
Thank you.
But
Yeah,
if anybody wants the Excel, I mean, do whatever you want with it. I've got the original, so don't worry about, if you want to go through and yes, no everything and see what it looks like, whatever you do is fine. It's your copy.
I think that would, I would think that would really mess you up if you got all of us sending in our own versions.
Oh, no.
Oh,
No,
so
you
then
need
it's
just
No,
doing
just
it at
tweak on
home
your
for
own.
ourselves.
Ours won't count.
Would not
Send me something, I'm not going to open it. Yeah.
Okay, we're clear on that.
Well, because that's what the committee meetings are for anyways, but if you want to play on your own and just forecast or whatever you want to
Yeah.
do,
One of-
you're free to do that. It's your copy.
One of the reasons why it might be a good idea to do that is that once you've decided, and admittedly, the discussion here can change your mind, but assuming that the discussion doesn't change your mind, once you've decided what you're voting for, and you put that into the spreadsheet, then you're going to get the answer as to what the percentage tax increase is going to be and how many dollars more each of the three categories of homes will have to pay. And then you can ask yourself, can I live with this? Is this something that I think the Finance Committee should recommend? And if you find the answer is yes, you're also go back to sleep. But if you don't like it, then you have to really go through it and say, well, what am I going to do to get it down to a level that I think is sustainable for taxpayers? So it's a very good tool for us individually.
Dynamically, too.
Yep.
And so the way you would do that, if you open up the Excel, if you feel comfortable with that, the third column here, the FC recommend yes or no, if you just put yeses in there for all the things that you think you like, and then you just go to the bottom, it'll automatically calculate a new estimated tax rate, and it'll tell you what your tax change will be for the house. Okay?
But
So
you better.
That's all you have to do.
You better revise that to put in the $1.46 for the state tax.
I'm gonna do that and send out another one tomorrow.
Good.
Yep, thank you.
Yep.
I'll add that, because it changes things quite a bit. There may not be a reduction in this case.
There won't be.
It's a smaller reduction. No, sorry.
It's zero.
1.02 and 1.4. Yeah, it actually goes up, but just less.
Well, I'm gonna have to leave that to you guys,
I'm
because I
sorry.
have to,
If nothing passes.
well, I have to change hats, I become news reporter.
Nothing
that's my-
passes,
my work
it's still an
Thursday.
increase, because the budget's
Yeah.
went up a little bit. So anyways, you can play with it. That's why I did it, because I want to see how my initial thoughts carry out.
You don't have any motions to approve any
Okay.
minutes, right?
No, we don't.
You looking for a motion to adjourn?
Yes,
So moved.
Second?
Thank you.
you can have it.
No arguments.
You won't fight